What was Gram Parsons like to work with?
Gram was an amazing guy. I mean, first of all, he only made it to 26. So most of the time I worked with him, I was 21, 22, maybe, or 22 probably by the time Gram got kicked out of the Burritos by Chris Hillman because he just wouldn't show up. Gram decided he wanted to be in the Rolling Stones, so he hung out with them and stayed up all night, and he couldn't make our rehearsals anymore, so he was dropped by Chris. But Gram was an incredibly interesting personality, and there was something deep South, kind of like almost like New Orleans or Savannah, like that's just a little mysterious, in the Carolinas and Georgia. He lived in Waycross, Georgia, and his family was based in Winter Park, Florida. But there's just something kind of, all the Spanish moss on the live oak trees, and there's just something kind of mysterious down there. And there was tragedy in Gram's family. There was alcoholism in his family. But he had been to really good schools. In fact, back to your question about where did this come from, he went to Harvard for like one semester, except he forgot to go to class. And, so he met some interesting people there, but he started a country rock band in Boston, of all places, called the International Submarine Band. And then he dropped out of school and he moved to LA. And so then he formed the band with Chris. And the story with him meeting Chris, they were standing in line at a bank, and they just chatted each other up and found out they had so much in common, and so they just started hanging out. And then Chris got him in the Byrds. They made Sweetheart of the Radio album, which a lot of people say is the original country rock album. Yeah. The one that was with a big band that made a splash, Right. But before it even got released, Gram was out of that group. And Chris and Gram had formed the Burritos. So Roger McGuinn replaced a bunch of Gram's vocals on the Sweetheart album. Which is all just part of the mythology of Gram, then they made this brilliant first album, and right after that, and they used their advance money from A&M to buy nudie suits, but they put marijuana plants and pills on Gram's, suit, and they just put whatever they wanted on the suit, and they had to put sequins all over it. So it was, again, like even in fashion, was cross-pollinating with how Porter Wagoner or whoever, their suits. I mean, he had wagon wheels because Porter Wagoner, but Gram had pot plants and pills on his, and beautiful greenery. Actually, they were a pot plant greenery going down the legs, all green on a white suit, green marijuana plant with sequins all over it. But I wasn't in the band yet, so they spent all their money on the nudie suits. And then I saw them do an open mic night at the Troubadour Club, and they were horrible. It's like they looked so good, like Super Bowl halftime ready, but they had forgotten to rehearse. Yeah. They were horrible.
They spent all their time designing nudie suits.
Yeah. So that made such an impression on me that you could look so good and fail so spectacularly. So anyway, then the bass player left, and Gram was still there, and I joined the band. And we played the Altamont, the anti-Woodstock event. That was really weird.
Yeah, I saw a video of that just the other day. You guys were playing. Yeah, and it was pretty incredible because they panned and zoomed, and there's Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Neil Young. They're all just standing on the side watching you guys. And I didn't really know much about that whole event because I know a whole lot about just strict country music history. But as I dug into that event, that was a pretty crazy thing.
It was beyond crazy. I mean, they were supposed to be at one outdoor place, like more of like a speedway or something, and the local county heard that the Stones were coming, and they freaked out, and they passed an ordinance overnight that no bands could play there. Oh wow! So in the middle of the night, the decision was that we have to find a place, and it's kind of like Woodstock took place on Yasgur's farm, actual farm. Right. So they found this place that might have been also a dirt track speedway thing, but little and no infrastructure at all. And they put it on the radio about, starting at about 3 a.m, that it got moved and everybody should go out to this place. And they before GPS and everything, there were so many people on the road that the traffic just stopped, and people just started getting out of their cars on the interstate, leaving their cars in the traffic lane miles from the place. And we were trying to get in a station wagon, and Sneaky Pete, the steel player, was driving, and we were driving down the breakdown lane. That worked fine at 40 miles an hour until somebody else got the idea right in front of us, and we hit them and went down. The careened down in the ditch, and when everybody was safe and was okay. But then Gram was like, we got to get there, man. The Angels, he stopped a Hell's Angel guy, or a couple of them. He goes, come on, let's get on these bikes with these guys, and hopped on, ponied in the back. And I hopped on one, and Gram did, and we were the only two that did. So then we went in with the Angels, and then they came in at the top of this amphitheater, and just dirt, kind of sloped like an amphitheater. And there were already probably 5,000 people on blankets. And this guy just... Wow. I was on the back of his bike. He just drove right down through the crowd. And there was no security. The stage was about this high, maybe 4 foot high. No security. And the Angels were the security force. And they were all drinking Red Mountain wine, and they were all getting trashed. And if you really want to see what happened, there's a film called Gimme Shelter that's all about it.
Yeah, that crazy one to hire the Hells Angels as security at an event like that.
Yeah, so, and also Woodstock, see, nobody had done shows that big, right? So I think there were 300,000 people at Altamont. Can you imagine? There were no porta potties. There was no infrastructure.
Wasn't
The PAs couldn't even barely reach the crowd, So there was no infrastructure. Nobody knew how to do that. And Woodstock also wasn't able to deal with the logistics of it. And other festivals failed because the fences couldn't keep the people out. So the tickets were basically no good. And the fences would just fall down, so nobody got paid and all that kind of thing because so it was relatively insane.
Were the Rolling Stones, do you think they were trying to recreate what had happened at Woodstock?
They were trying to get on the bandwagon somehow, but the way that it went down just was out of control, and they could not control it. So there was about 4 bands that went on during the daytime, including the Burritos. The Grateful Dead were supposed to play, but when Garcia found out what it was like, they didn't play. So there was a gap in the afternoon where nobody played for about an hour and a half because the Stones wanted to wait till it got dark so that their lighting would make it be more dramatic, So there was nothing going on stage for about an hour and a half. Also, the guys in the Jefferson Airplane were actually beat up. Marty Balin was beat up on stage by the Angels, who were already getting drunk. They were hitting people with pool cues.
So he got hired security Hells Angels beat up
they
the
were
talent.
Beating up the band on stage.
That's crazy.
So then there was this big pause in the afternoon, and the Stones went on right after dark, and a lot of dynamics, man. Like they played "Sympathy for the Devil," and the Hells Angels, who are all real, actual tough guys, and the Stones were all scrawny, vegetarian hippies from millionaires from the UK, and so you can see it in that film. They're playing "Sympathy for the Devil," and it sounds like ominous and all that. But the Angels are all looking at the Stones. They're all on the side of the stage going, this is weird, man. Like we could eat these guys for lunch, And they looked like they were ready to do that, And then somebody was killed by them right in front of the stage while the Stones were playing. That's the truth. Guy was beaten to death by the Angels with pool cues right in front of the stage. So isn't it great that modern country music and rock and roll festivals have such great security? They have bathrooms and they have a medical tent, in case somebody ODs. It's like it's much safer now.
Yeah, that sounds like the Wild West.
It was totally the Wild West.
Well, you mentioned a while ago that Gram stopped showing up for rehearsal and stuff because he wanted to be with the Stones. Was that actually a thing, or was that just something that he thought could happen, or was there like an open invitation?
Okay, so then Gram was out of the Burritos and he was about to leave.